He was a boy who looked at the stars and dreamed of truth. A man of science, a mind of genius, a heart full of doubt. He gave the world its most powerful weapon and spent the rest of his life trying to take it back. This is not just a story about war. It's a story about choices, about fear, about regret. This is the story of Robert Oppenheimer, the man who became death, the man who changed the world forever. Chapter 1. A boy who loved the stars. He was just a boy, a quiet boy, a boy who looked up at the stars and dreamed. His name was Julius Robert Oppenheimer, but most people would later call him something else. The father of the atomic bomb. He was born in New York City in 1904. His family was rich and Jewish, with roots from Germany. They had money, books, art, but young Robert loved only one thing: science. Even as a child, he asked strange questions. He didn't want toys. He wanted books. He wanted the truth behind the sky, the earth, the atom. By the time he was a teenager, he had already fallen in love. Not with a girl, but with theoretical physics. He went to Harvard University and studied chemistry. He graduated with honors in 1925. But he wasn't done. He went to Germany to the famous University of Göttingen. There, he got his PhD in physics in 1927. But there was something strange about Robert. He didn't care about friends. He didn't party. He didn't smile much. One day, he told his brother, "I only need physics. I don't need people." People said he was a genius, but also broken. He suffered from depression. His mind was brilliant, but it was also dangerous. In 1926, something happened. Something dark. He became angry with one of his professors. The man told him, "You are better for experimental physics, not theoretical." That hurt Robert deeply. So what did he do? He took an apple. He injected it with poison, and he left it on the professor's desk. Yes, he tried to kill him. But the professor never ate the apple. No one found out, except the university. They didn't send him to jail. They sent him to London for mental health treatment. That moment stayed with him forever. It was the first sign that his mind could go too far. But Robert was not just a scientist. He was also a man of many languages. He spoke English, German, French, Latin, ancient Greek, even Sanskrit. Once, he had to give a lecture in Dutch. He learned it in 6 weeks. He was fast, he was sharp, and in the world of physics, he was becoming a star. But no one, not even him, could imagine that one day this quiet boy would help build the most powerful weapon in human history. What happens when a mind full of stars turns toward war? Can science become a curse? Chapter 2. A Dangerous Mind. Robert was now a man. a young professor, a brilliant mind, a scientist who lived in books and silence. But behind his sharp brain was a storm. People didn't understand him. They said he was strange, distant, intense. He would walk alone for hours, lost in thought. Sometimes he forgot to eat. Sometimes he forgot to sleep. He cared only about one thing: ideas. He wanted to know how the universe worked. Atoms, energy, black holes. Yes. Years before anyone else, he predicted the existence of black holes and something called the positron, a tiny particle that would help shape modern physics. But Robert didn't just live in science. He also lived in language. He could speak 6 languages fluently: English, German, French, Latin, Greek, even Sanskrit. He once read ancient Hindu texts in their original form. His favorite line came from the Bhagavad Gita. It said, "Now I am become death, the destroyer of worlds." That line would haunt him later, but not yet. At this point, he was just becoming famous, respected, admired, and still deeply alone. No close friends, no real family life, no peace. Inside, he was still the boy who once tried to poison his professor. The pain, the anger, still lived in him. He tried to find love. He met a few women. One was a psychiatrist, another a radical political activist. But his mind was always somewhere else, in another world, a world of atoms, numbers, and silent explosions. He began to teach at 2 universities at the same time, Berkeley and Caltech. Students loved him. He spoke like no one else. He made physics feel like magic. But something was changing, not in the classroom, in the world. It was the 1930s. Hitler was rising. Nazism was spreading. War was coming. And science was about to enter a new age, a dangerous one. In 1939, something happened in Germany. 2 scientists discovered something called nuclear fission. The atom could be split, and with that split came enormous energy, enough to light a city or destroy it. America was afraid. What if Hitler made a bomb first? And so they came to Robert. They wanted him to lead a secret team, to build a weapon using atomic science, to stop the Nazis, to change the world. Robert said yes. Why did he say yes? Was it fear, duty, pride? Or was it the thrill of doing the impossible? Chapter 3. A secret mission begins. The year was 1942. The world was at war. Germany had taken much of Europe. Japan had attacked Pearl Harbor. America was now part of the fight. And in secret, a new kind of war had already started. Not with guns, not with tanks, but with science. America was afraid that Hitler would get the bomb first, afraid that the Nazis were building something terrible. So they began a project so secret. Even most soldiers didn't know about it. It was called the Manhattan Project. The goal? To build the world's first atomic bomb, before Germany. They needed a leader, a scientist who understood the atom and could lead men. They chose Robert Oppenheimer. It was a strange choice. He had never led a large team. He wasn't a soldier, and some people didn't trust him because of his past and his politics. But he was brilliant and fast and full of fire. He said yes, and the mission began. Robert built a team of the greatest scientists in the world, famous names, big minds, men who knew how dangerous this work could be. They went to a quiet place in the desert, Los Alamos, New Mexico. No cities, no noise, just sand, sky, and silence. They built a laboratory there, hidden from the world, surrounded by guards, fences, and secrets, and they worked day and night, no rest, trying to solve one problem. How do you turn the atom into a bomb? They studied uranium. They studied plutonium. They made calculations. They tested machines. Months passed. Pressure grew. Every day, Robert changed. He lost weight. He smoked more. He stopped smiling. He knew what they were making. He knew it could kill thousands, even millions. And yet, he kept going. Why? Because the Nazis were moving fast. Because if they didn't build it, someone else would. Because they believed it was the only way to win the war. But one person said no. Albert Einstein. He refused to join the project. He said it was too dangerous. He warned, "This weapon will change everything. Forever." Still, Robert believed he was doing the right thing. At least, for now. What happens when a secret becomes too big to hide? And when science crosses the line, who pays the price? Chapter 4. The Race to Beat Hitler. The desert was quiet. But inside Los Alamos, the air was full of tension. It was now 1944. Robert and his team had one goal: build the bomb before Germany does. Every second mattered. Every formula, every test. They called it the race to beat Hitler. But it wasn't a race of cars. It was a race of minds, of fear, of power. The team worked day and night. Some were losing hope. Some were losing sleep. Robert hardly ever left the lab. He ate little. He hardly spoke. His eyes were darker now, his face thinner, his voice quieter. Still, he kept pushing. He told his team, "We must win this race. We must, or the world may burn." But some scientists began to worry. "What are we doing?" they asked. "What will this bomb do to people?" Robert had no answers. He only said, "Let's finish first. We'll think later." In July 1945, the bomb was almost ready. They called the final test Trinity. A code name, a secret, a moment that would change the world. They chose a quiet spot in the desert. No people, no homes, Just dry land and a tower. And on that tower, the bomb. The day was July 16th, 1945. The time, 5:30 a.m. The scientists stood far away, wearing dark glasses. Their hearts were racing. A countdown began. 5, 4, 3, 2, 1. Boom. The sky exploded in light. Red, white, blue. A fireball rose into the sky, and then a giant mushroom cloud. It was the first atomic explosion in human history. The ground shook. Windows broke, miles away. People thought it was an earthquake or the end of the world. But Robert saw it, and he whispered, "Now I am become death, the destroyer of worlds." Yes, he said that. A line from the Bhagavad Gita, from ancient India, words that meant power and sorrow. Some scientists cheered, others cried. Robert stood still. The bomb had worked. But no one smiled for long, because the next bomb would not be a test. It would be dropped on a real city, on real people, and nothing would ever be the same again. What happens when science wins, but humanity loses? Chapter 5. The bomb is ready. He had done it. After years of work, sleepless nights, burning questions. The bomb was ready. The test was over. The explosion at Trinity had shocked the world, even though the world didn't know it yet. Only a few people had seen it. Only a few knew what it meant. Robert Oppenheimer stood there, silent, the fireball still glowing in his mind. The earth had shaken. The air had turned to light. The desert had become a symbol of power and fear. And now, there was no going back. In Washington, the leaders smiled. The president, the generals, they all saw one thing: victory. They didn't see fire, or screams, or skin burning. They saw an end to the war. They saw a new world, one where America ruled with strength. Robert was invited to the White House. President Harry Truman asked him, "How do you feel, Mr. Oppenheimer?" And Robert said, with a voice that shook, "Mr. President, I feel like I have blood on my hands." The room went silent. Truman looked at him, angry. He didn't want guilt. He wanted results. He told his men later, "Don't ever let that crybaby in here again." Robert left, feeling empty. But the machine had already started. The military had plans. They had chosen 2 cities in Japan, Hiroshima and Nagasaki. Robert tried to stop it. He spoke to the generals. Why not show the bomb first? Drop it on an empty island. Show its power. Give Japan a chance to surrender. But they didn't listen. They wanted to end the war, now. And they wanted the world to know, America has the bomb. On August 6, 1945, the first bomb was dropped. The plane was called Enola Gay. The bomb's name, Little Boy. It fell on Hiroshima. At 8:15 in the morning, the sky turned white. In seconds, the city disappeared. Buildings turned to dust. Children vanished. People burned alive. Over 70,000 people died instantly, and thousands more died slowly, from fire, from wounds, from poison in the air. 3 days later, on August 9th, they dropped a second bomb. This one was called Fat Man. It fell on Nagasaki. Again, fire, screams, silence. Over 40,000 more lives gone. Robert watched the news. He read the reports. He saw the photos, black and white, full of pain. And he broke inside. He had built the bomb. He had followed the science. But now, he saw the faces of people, not numbers, not targets, not dots on a map. Children, mothers, elders, gone, because of what he made. He told a friend, "In some ways, I wish I had never done it." But it was too late. The world had entered a new age, an age of nuclear fear, an age of silence, under the shadow of the bomb. Robert had created something that could end cities, end nations, maybe even end the world. And yet, the leaders called him a hero. Some said he saved America. Some said he ended the war. But Robert did not feel like a hero. He felt like a man who had opened a door and now could not close it. What happens when you win, but lose your soul? What happens when the thing you build destroys what you love? Chapter 6. Hiroshima and the blood on his hands. The war was over, but the silence was louder than bombs. On August 15th, 1945, Japan surrendered. The world cheered. In America, people danced in the streets. They waved flags. They hugged strangers. But one man did not smile. Robert Oppenheimer. He sat alone. He did not cheer. He did not laugh. He only thought of one thing: Hiroshima. He had seen the photos. A city turned to ashes. Children with burned skin. Houses gone. Only shadows left on the ground. He saw black rain. He read reports of people crying, melting, running with no skin. One bomb, 1 second. One city destroyed. And then, Nagasaki. 3 days later. A second bomb. More death, more silence. Robert felt sick. He remembered the test at Trinity, the fireball, the power, the words he whispered, "Now I am become death, the destroyer of worlds." At the time, it felt like poetry. Now, it felt like truth. He said to a friend, "The physicists have known sin." In Washington, he tried to speak. He asked for limits. He said, "We must control these weapons. We must never use them again." But the leaders didn't want limits. They wanted more. A new bomb. Stronger, hotter, deadlier. A hydrogen bomb. Robert said no. He warned, "This is not a defense. This is mass murder." But few listened. To them, he was just a scientist. To them, war had rules, and Robert was becoming a problem. He gave speeches, he wrote letters, he spoke on the radio. He said, "We must stop before it is too late." But the country was changing. It was the Cold War now. The enemy was no longer Germany. It was the Soviet Union. Fear was rising, and in times of fear, people stop listening. Then came the questions. Was Robert a communist? Did he have friends in Russia? Did he share secrets? Years ago, in his youth, he had known people in the Communist Party. He had once supported workers, rights, peace. Now, they used that against him. In 1954, Robert was called to a hearing. A dark room, many men, questions, questions, questions. They said, "You are not loyal. You are a risk. You are not American enough." He answered with pain, with sadness, but also with truth. He said, "I have always worked for this country. I wanted to protect it, not harm it." But it didn't matter. They took his job. They removed his title. They erased his name from government science. He was blacklisted. The man who gave them the bomb was now the enemy. He went back to teaching, to reading, to silence. He gave lectures, wrote about peace, talked to students. But his voice was softer now. His eyes, tired. He had seen too much. In 1967, he died. Cancer took his voice, and then his breath. But even in death, his name lived on. Some called him a hero. Others called him a murderer. Some said he ended the war. Others said he ended humanity's innocence. And what did Robert believe? We may never know. But once he said, "In the end, we are not only scientists, we are also men. And men must answer for what they create." What do you do when your greatest work becomes your greatest regret? Can history forgive what science created? Chapter 7. From Hero to Enemy. At first he was a hero. The newspapers praised him. The generals thanked him. The scientists admired him. He had helped end World War II. He had built the most powerful weapon in human history. But soon, the world began to change. And Robert Oppenheimer became a problem. After the war, America was no longer at peace. A new enemy had appeared, the Soviet Union. It was the start of the Cold War, a war of spies, lies, and fear. The two biggest nations in the world were now in a race for power, a race for bombs. And in this race, science was no longer just knowledge, it was a weapon. The U.S. wanted a bigger bomb. a new kind of bomb. One that used hydrogen. One that was 1,000 times stronger than the one dropped on Hiroshima. They called it the H-bomb. Robert said no. He stood in front of the government and said, "We do not need this bomb. It is not a step forward. It is a step into the dark." He believed the world was already in danger. Another bomb would not make it safer. It would only bring more fear and more death. But his no came at a price. The government turned against him. They didn't want a voice of reason. They wanted control. And Robert had become a voice of doubt. Some called him a traitor. Some whispered, "He's a communist." They pointed to his past. His wife had once joined the Communist Party. His brother, too. And Robert had once spoken at meetings about peace, justice, and workers' rights. That was enough. In 1954, Robert was called to a secret hearing. He stood in a room full of men in suits. They asked question after question. Did you ever help the communists? Did you pass secrets to Russia? Do you love your country? He answered them all. No, I never shared secrets. I always worked for peace. I love my country. But the truth didn't matter. Fear was stronger than facts. The hearing lasted for weeks. His friends came to speak for him. So did his enemies. They used his own words against him. They said he was not loyal. They said he could not be trusted. At the end, the decision came. Robert Oppenheimer would lose everything. No more government work. No more security clearance. No more influence. The man who helped build the bomb was now not even allowed to touch one. He went home broken. His name was still known, but it was now a name in the shadows. People were afraid to work with him, afraid to even speak to him. The same people who once shook his hand now looked away. He returned to teaching. He gave lectures at small universities. He wrote essays. He read books. But the fire was gone. He was still brilliant, still curious, still thoughtful. But he no longer believed he had a place in the halls of power. Years passed. And slowly, some people began to see the truth. They saw how fear had silenced him. They saw how politics had punished a man who once saved them. But Robert never asked for pity. He said once, "It is not easy to stand alone, but sometimes someone must." In the final years of his life, he watched the world grow more dangerous. More bombs, more missiles, more countries chasing power. And he wondered, was it all his fault? What happens when the hero becomes the enemy? And when the truth is no longer welcome, who dares to speak it? Chapter 8. Fighting the monster he created. He had built the bomb, and now he tried to stop it. Robert Oppenheimer was no longer a hero. He was no longer part of the U.S. government. No more secrets, no more meetings. But he still had a voice. And he still had a mission: to warn the world. He spoke to students. He gave lectures. He wrote letters to leaders. He said, "This weapon is too powerful. One mistake, and we destroy everything." He believed the bomb should never be used again. He believed the world needed peace, not fear. But the world was not listening. The Cold War was growing. America and the Soviet Union were testing more bombs, bigger, louder, deadlier, in the oceans, in the air, underground. They built rockets, missiles, submarines with bombs inside. The danger was everywhere. One wrong move, and millions could die. And Oppenheimer knew. He helped start this. He once told a friend, "I feel like I created a monster, and now I cannot stop it." But he tried. He joined peace groups. He met with scientists. He asked for limits on testing. He asked for control. He even warned that China and other countries would want the bomb too. He was right. But still, the world wanted more weapons. One day, someone asked him, "Why did you do it? Why did you build the bomb?" He answered quietly, "When you see something possible, as a scientist, it is hard to stop. But I didn't think of the people. I only thought of the science." He had once believed the bomb could end all wars. Now he saw that it might end something else: the future. In 1960, he was invited to speak in Europe. He met with leaders, with young minds, with people who still respected him. In Europe, he was not hated. He was not feared. He was seen as a man of deep thought and deep regret. He spoke not as a man of power, but as a man who had seen what power can do. He told them, "The world has changed. We must now change with it, or we may not survive." He begged for science to be used for healing, not for war, not for killing. Back in America, things were still difficult. Some people wanted to restore his name. Others still called him weak or dangerous. But slowly, the world was changing again. People were starting to fear the bomb, not admire it. They saw its cost. They felt its weight. And some began to say, maybe Oppenheimer was right. But for Robert, it was late. He was sick. His body was weak. Cancer was growing in his throat. He found it hard to speak. But he kept writing, kept thinking, until the very end. He looked at the stars. He thought of atoms, of life, of fire, of peace. He once said, "We knew the world would not be the same." And he was right. The world had changed because of science, because of war, because of men like him. And even though he tried to stop it, the bomb was already out. Other countries had it now, other leaders, other enemies. He could not control it. No one could. But he hoped maybe someone, someday, would. What do you do when you cannot undo your work? Can you still stand for peace, even after creating destruction? Chapter 9. A Man Alone. And a world forever changed. The house was quiet. Books on the shelves, letters on the desk, a coat hanging by the door. Robert Oppenheimer sat in his chair, looking out the window at the sea. The waves moved slowly, like time, like memory. He was old now, thin, tired. His voice was weak, his body smaller, but his mind still full of fire. He thought about the past, the lab in Los Alamos, the fireball in the sky, the voices of men shouting, cheering, crying. He thought about the cities, Hiroshima, Nagasaki, the children, the silence, and his hands. "I feel like I have blood on my hands," he had once said. Years later, the blood was gone, but the feeling stayed. He was no longer called a hero, no longer a traitor. Now, people called him something else, a warning. They studied his life. They read his words. They asked, "Can one man change the world? And if he does, who decides if it was right or wrong?" In 1963, something strange happened. After all the pain, after the hearings, after losing his name, the U.S. government gave him an award. It was called the Enrico Fermi Award, a medal for science, a symbol of respect. President Lyndon B. Johnson gave it to him. Oppenheimer smiled, a soft smile, but he knew it would not change the past. The bomb was still here. The fear was still real. He accepted the medal. But inside, he knew, no medal can take away the shadows. In his final days, Robert read books. He walked slowly by the sea. He spent time with his wife, with his thoughts. He did not give big speeches. He did not seek attention. He had done enough. On February 18th, 1967, he died. He was 62 years old. Cancer had taken his voice, and then his breath. The world did not stop. The bombs stayed. The races continued. The fear grew. But something else remained too. His story. People still ask, was he a hero? Or a monster? A savior? Or a destroyer? Some say he ended the war. Others say he ended our safety. Some thank him. Others blame him. But all agree on one thing: he changed history. In the years after his death, many things changed. New countries made bombs. Talks of peace rose and fell. But one thing never left: the power of the atom and the fear it brings. And in every classroom, every science book, every lesson about war and peace, his name appears. J. Robert Oppenheimer. In 2022, even decades later, a movie about his life was made. People watched it, cried, debated. They asked, was he sorry? Would he do it again? What would we do in his place? Maybe there is no clear answer. Maybe history is not about perfect choices, but about difficult ones. And maybe, just maybe, Oppenheimer knew that better than anyone. He once said, "In some way, I have become part of history, not because I wanted to, but because I could not stop it." What happens when a man changes the world, and then the world forgets the cost? What happens when knowledge becomes power, and power becomes fear? The bomb was made. The world was changed. And the boy who once loved the stars became the man who brought fire to earth.